As if I could learn more ways that something could go wrong. My tripod broke. Oh, sorry. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. We're in Susie Albert Miller's book with the foreword by Beth and Jeff McCord. We're publishers, weekly best-selling authors of Becoming Us. Listen, learn, love. How to dramatically improve your relationships in 30 days or less. We are now on page 39. We're in the part that says, what about my feelings? She says, in my work with clients, we talk a lot about feeling your feelings and then deciding what you want to do about them. Too often we mishandle our feelings. Judged as inappropriate, we try to deny, change, or bury them. This simply does not work. It is a bit like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It always pops up somewhere. Feelings are similar. We try to hide, deny, or stuff them. Then we overreact about a small issue. We snap at our kids, find fault with a coworker, or we are just plain cranky. Ignored feelings, like beach balls, will pop up somewhere, usually at inopportune moments, creating an even bigger mess. We need to express our feelings and allow others to do the same. When someone shares their feelings, the best thing to do is validate them, whether or not we agree with them. Instead of trying to talk someone out of their feelings or help change them. Instead of sharing our feelings, we need to take a moment and hear their feelings. One day, our outgoing son came home from middle school and said, I don't have any friends. Perplexed by this statement because he was a pretty popular kid, I did the absolutely wrong thing and replied, yes, you do, and proceeded to list a few. Talk about a conversation killer. He didn't feel listened to, heard, or understood. I dismissed his feelings. He felt shut down. He said, whatever, and walked away. I blew it. I was so caught up in not wanting him to feel this way, my feelings, that I missed an opportunity to validate his feelings and discover the story behind them. I hope the next time he struggled, I responded with, sorry you feel that way, that sucks, and then proceeded to ask questions and listen to what he was trying to communicate. But as a work in progress, I messed up often with all my kids. Good morning, Colleen Dracos. How are you? Please don't judge yourself on your missteps or failures. Instead, give yourself credit for learning and practicing these skills. Change takes time. I applaud your courage to enter the arena of growth and your willingness to try. Like any skill, the more you practice, the better you become. So keep practicing. Putting your feelings aside for a moment or processing them at a later time is a way to connect with others and show that you are interested in listening to them. It isn't easy, but it leads to deeper connections and better relationships because people feel heard and cared about when we listen to them, clarifying and validating their feelings. Allowing a loved one to express their feelings, then seeking to clarify and validate them is a terrific way to show you care and will strengthen your relationship. Technical difficulty at the moment. Let's do this. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Okay, better. The most important question to ask. Tip number 3, learn to say, I'm sorry. Be willing to be wrong. I'm sorry are two of the most powerful and effective words in the English language. I can say that there's a famous radio broadcaster in my area whose name is Michael Krasny, And he actually was talking about road rage once on his show topic. And he said that there was one time he accidentally cut somebody off, and the other person managed to the other person lean on their horn. And then when he got next to them, he looked at the other driver and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," to the other person. And the other person looked immediately relaxed. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. Ta-da. So, the author has an example. My friend's daughter, Stephanie, and her fiance, Dustin, were deep in the midst of plans for their upcoming wedding one Saturday afternoon. They were running errands and making final decisions about the major details of the ceremony and reception. Needless to say, they were tired and stressed. They were in Dustin's truck, and Stephanie looked over at him and said, "I know there are lots of details to get worked out, but one thing is really important to me. I'd like to get a nice wedding band." Dustin looked over and said, "Why? That seems crazy." She heard contempt in his voice, but she quietly said, "There are a lot of things that I don't care about, but I think having a nice wedding band is important." He looked over at her and said, "Don't you think you're being a little ridiculous?" "Well, I've always wanted a nice wedding band," she said. Dustin said, "I just don't get it. I think it's nuts." At this point, tears started filling in her eyes. She said, "I'm just trying to tell you this is really important to me." She got really quiet and turned her head toward the window. Dustin could sense she was upset and said, "Look, I'm just saying, I think you're being ridiculous." Stephanie said, "If it's a matter of money, I can contribute." "That's even more crazy," he said as his fists tightened on the wheel. Now tears were rolling down her cheeks, and they were both tense and quiet. She finally broke the silence and said, "It's something I'm going to have the rest of my life, and I just thought it would be good to get a nice one." "The rest of your life? It's just one night, and I think it's a waste to spend a lot of money on a wedding band that's just for one night." "Wait, one night? I'm talking about a wedding band to go with my engagement ring, not a wedding band to play at the reception." "Really?" he said. "I'm sorry. This whole time I thought you were talking about a wedding band to play music at the reception." "No, I was talking about a ring," she said as they looked at each other and burst out laughing. I thought it was too. I thought it was one ring, but anyway. Two words, "I'm sorry," can change everything. Two words. In a moment, the tension fades, perspectives shift, communication and connection deepen, the relationship is restored. "I'm sorry" is not saying "you are absolutely right. I am a jerk and I did that on purpose." It is saying, "I'm sorry you are hurting and that my action or words or lack of action contributed to those feelings. It was not my intention to hurt you." A crucial question to ask yourself: is being right more important than this relationship? I encourage you to ask yourself this question often in the middle of a tense conversation or disagreement. When I remember to ask myself this question, I am reminded in the moment that the relationship is the most important thing and helps me practice listen, learn, love, especially when I don't want to. It has kept me from making a difficult situation worse and reminded me to be willing to say I'm sorry. Knowing this truth and putting it into practice often seems like crossing the Grand Canyon. We falsely view being the first to apologize as a sign of weakness or as caving in. What if you what if you reframed the choice to be the first to say I'm sorry as a sign of strength and humility? You willingly relinquish the demand to be right, communicating that this person and your relationship is more important. Can you imagine how your relationships would improve? I'm sorry is not an admission of guilt. It is not declaring you purposely did or said something wrong or are taking responsibility for what you may be accused of doing. Sometimes it simply acknowledges their hurt and your sorrow for their struggle. It is giving them a place to share their feelings and your impact on them. Denial makes it worse. I am a cancer survivor, Susie Albert Miller. I am a cancer survivor, and the treatment to kill the cancer resulted in a compromised immune system and 17 subsequent years of chronic illness. I have great doctors, take all kinds of supplements and medicines, and work hard to stay well, but sometimes to fight debilitating infections, I must take high doses of steroids, which give me insomnia and alter my personality. One year, it got so bad I hardly recognized myself. Bloated from steroid-induced weight gain, frazzled from stress and insomnia, battling sadness, depression, and steroid mania. I was a wreck, living in denial. Yes, coaches and therapists have issues too. I would make plans pretending that maybe tomorrow I would feel better, only to cancel them in the morning. Desperately wanting my life to be different, I continued in this cycle of pretending and denial. However, I didn't take into account how living in denial impacted the people in my life. I will never forget a difficult interaction with our oldest daughter, Kate. She was angry and disappointed because I was feeling physically awful and had canceled our plans again. Kate shared her frustration, but I snapped back at her. I didn't listen well and got defensive, but she was right. She was legitimately disappointed. She was looking forward to our shopping trip, and I had canceled again. I had foolishly made plans when it was likely I wouldn't be able to follow through. Both of us were angry about the impact of my illness on our lives. Due to the steroids, and my temper and patience were short, and insomnia had frazzled my very last nerve. She looked at me and said, "It's really hard to be mad at you for canceling plans because you are sick, or for the way you act and hurt my feelings when I know it's because you are so sick and on medicine that changes you." Bam! Kate was mature, courageous, and honest about her struggles and feelings. I remember thinking, what is a good response to her tender vulnerability? She was hurting and angry. Her feelings were valid. She wanted me to understand and stop changing plans. She wanted me to be well. This was one of my better mom moments, and rather than explaining, dismissing, or justifying, I said, "I'm sorry. That must be really hard for you, and it totally sucks that you have to deal with this." Big sigh. Kate's posture changed as if a weight had been lifted off. She felt heard, listened to, and validated, just what she needed. It didn't fix the problem or even change the situation, but an ease came over our relationship as she realized I understood, accepted, validated, and even apologized for my part in her frustration and struggle. I hated being sick. I despised the medicines and their impact on my body, my mind, personality, and life. I was angry at cancer, at chronic illness, at life, at myself, and at God. I felt out of control, and in many areas I was. I couldn't get better, faster, or change the way the steroids or illness affected me, but living in denial was hurting the people I loved. I realized what gave me hope, making plans even if they would be canceled. Just set Kate and others up for disappointment. I tried to stop making plans based more on my desire than reality. Kate was forgiving. My denial of what was really going on hurt the people I love. Listening to what others shared about how my denial impacted our relationship helped me be more honest about the reality of the situation. Listening does that. Honestly, I often fail in these kinds of interactions. Rather than choosing to clarify and validate, explaining and justifying are my right and rights and left hooks when I am feeling defensive. Yet they are devastating blows to effective communication. But that time I listened, and it really helped Kate and me be gentler with one another in the midst of an extremely difficult season. The words "I'm sorry" go a long way in creating strong and safe relationships. Use these words often. Be willing to say them first. Ask yourself the crucial question: is being right more important than the relationship? Doing this will dramatically improve your relationships in 30 days or less. Try it. Listen with your eyes and ears. Listening with your eyes and ears and heart is a foolproof way to develop deep and meaningful relationships. Why? Because most people don't feel listened to, and everyone wants to be seen, heard, and understood. Not necessarily agreed with, but acknowledged and listened to. Have you ever been wounded by the words or actions of a close friend? Imagine yourself driving to Starbucks to meet this friend for a cup of coffee. It's hard to envision not being defensive and feeling guarded. Sitting there drinking lattes, you wonder, should I mention anything? Maybe I'm overreacting or being too sensitive. Of course, she's busy sharing while all this runs through your mind. Suddenly, she pauses, puts down her coffee cup, reaches over, touches your arm, looks you directly in the eyes, and asks, "Is something bothering you? You seem distracted, distant." Wouldn't that be awesome? She is listening to all you are communicating and inviting you to share what's bothering you. She's a close and trusted friend, so you share your thoughts and feelings. She had no idea her words had injured her dear friend and is glad you told her. Apologies, misty eyes, laughter, and restoration. You are relieved and grateful as your relationship grows deeper, safer, and stronger. Emily Dickinson, a quote: "I feel it shelter to speak to you. Imagine if, picture a conversation with your aging parents. They don't want to face the fact they're aging, let alone a conversation about it. However, they realize you're worried about future plans or what their preference would be if they become disabled. They not only validate your worry, but also willingly have a conversation they prefer to avoid." Oh, just an aside, Yin Yang went to the doctor yesterday and they handed her a advanced directive blank form. And I said, this is what starts with aging. I just needed to put that in there. Listen, learn, love. Envision a discussion with your spouse about a necessary debt increase for your entrepreneurial dream. Instead of fearfully shaking their head or just blurting out no, your spouse said, "Okay, even though it scares me, help me understand the need for this investment because I want to be supportive of you and your dreams." What if during a work meeting a colleague noticed your body language communicated frustration, but you hadn't spoken up and he paused to ask for your thoughts and input? Jot down some thoughts and feelings that came to mind as you read each of these scenarios. How do you feel when someone really listens to you? To create better relationships, we must be the ones who practice skill number one: listen. Like the conch shell we pick up to hear the ocean, some people say conch, and return to the shore in our mind's eye, listening well opens us to a deeper understanding of others. We will discover a multitude of insights, points of connection, and stories about our loved ones, friends, and colleagues that will help you create better relationships. Practicing listen, learn, love. Number one, pick one of your relationship avatars and recall a recent conversation when you did a less than stellar job of listening. Maybe you jumped in with, "Me too," and hijacked the conversation, interrupted to correct an inconsistency or error as they recounted a shared event, or didn't pause and pay attention. Regardless of details, you didn't really listen. If you had a do over, what would the conversation look and sound like using skill number one? Listen. Write a few notes about how you hope the conversation would go this time. If you are really feeling bold, mention it the next time you are with this friend. You might say, I was thinking about our conversation and I didn't really listen well. I'm sorry. I'm working on being a better listener. As their jaw drops open, just smile and know you have begun to build a better relationship with them. Number two, call to mind one conversation where saying, I'm sorry, could have changed the outcome. Write down this person's name quick before you talk yourself out of it. Revisit that conversation. Call them, show up at their home, office, or school, or take them to coffee and be brave enough to say, I'm sorry my actions or words hurt you. Three, remember to ask yourself, is being right more important than this relationship? This week, be aware of how you do or don't listen. Pick one tip and practice it in one or more of your relationships. Over time, add a second tip and so on until you are implementing all the tips and beginning to master skill number one. Listen. Number four, write one specific tip on three sticky notes. Put one on your bathroom mirror, steering wheel, TV remote, or other places you see multiple times each day. They will remind you to take action. I used to think this was silly, but life is full of distractions and often out of sight is out of mind. When I tried this sticky note trick, it worked. Seeing them prompted me to act rather than just think, talk, or dream about it. I asked I ask my clients to do I ask my clients to use this tool, and when they do, their relationships improve. Number 5, continue to practice skill number 1. Listen and watch your relationships improve. Now this was the end of chapter 3. Next week we will start on chapter 4, treasure hunts. There's a quote in there by Tom Hanks. Truth is, I'll never know all there is to know about you, as just as you will never know all there is to know about me. Humans are by nature too complicated to be understood fully, so we can choose either to approach our fellow human beings with suspicion or to approach them with an open mind, a dash of optimism, and a great deal of candor. Interesting. So, we will see you again tomorrow. What was I thinking of? I was thinking of that Congressman, old Kinderhook.